The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed. In this particular episode is Cues of the Force, Quasars of the Force. I don't know what that means. It's questions of the Force, and the questions always come with some A's. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok here, delivering the A's, rolling around in the queues, having some fun here today.
So filthy sounding. What did he say he does? He's an A delivery, man. What does that mean? Anyway, we always have fun with the Q's and the A's, questions and answers, and we are excited to get into it. Our first Audible, though, is our first A is Audible. Today's podcast is brought to you by, Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This episode, we're continuing to recommend The Princess and the Scoundrel by Beth Revis. Why? Because we like it. If you haven't checked it out and want to give it a listen, please do, because then you can tell us what the audiobook is like, since we read this one on paper and everything. You can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. So that is the Audible A down. We go now to our next A, which is the current ask, Ken.
That's right. Our current ask is to have you consider checking out Patreon. Patreon.com/ForceCenter is where you can support us directly. And we have a goal up there of $2,200 a month. We'll do another Star Wars Ranked live stream exclusive to patrons on Patreon, and then we'll release it to the public. We had a lot of fun doing our favorite sequel trilogy scenes with you all, and we want to do that again. So that's the goal over there. You can check it out by going to patreon.com/ForceCenter. Don't forget, Jedi Beat the YouTube edition will premiere soon, Monday, July 17th. Yes, the way calendars work, that is very soon, folks. And it's going to run for a total of 5 weeks. Jennifer's working really hard on the episodes, and it's not, when we originally pitched this, even to Jen, it was like, hey, take your audio, maybe slap some pictures on there, and voila, we got a video. We should have known better. Jen has gone back, grabbed the scripts, re-recorded a ton of stuff. She's basically making Jennifer Landis special editions of Jedi Beat, and it's going to be all new and fun to experience for many of you for the first time, for some all over again. And that's all possible because of you on Patreon.
That's right. And we will keep the original non-special edition versions of Jedi Beat, the original podcast versions available. So if you want to compare and contrast, you can with the fancy, shiny new videos. It sounds like she is going to knock it out of the park, not surprisingly. But yes, once she really decides to do something, she does it all the way. So she is working hard on those.
Yeah, love that. Love that.
All right. Well, that's 2 A's down. The only A's left is our answers. But in order to have answers, you have to have questions. That's sort of a philosophical question. Anyway, here are some questions. We have 2 from our patrons on Patreon. We have 1 from Twitter, and we have a wonderful Power of the Force segment to take us home. But first, we're going to questions from patrons on Patreon, and this comes to us from Ethan Truman. Ethan says, lately, I've been thinking a lot about how recent Star Wars storytelling has affected and enhanced my love for earlier stories and moments from the movies. A big example of this is how the Kenobi show enhances Kenobi's death scene in A New Hope. Now, having all of this new background between him and Leia really makes that scene more emotional for me. When Ben looks over to the twins and then smirks back at Vader, he's not just looking at Luke, who he has watched over, or even just the 2 kids whose births he witnessed. He's looking at 2 people he knows personally. Leia, in particular, has been on an adventure with Obi-Wan, and he has had intimate moments with her and helped shape her into who she has become. From Leia's perspective, she isn't just seeing an old man fighting Darth Vader. She sees her friend standing saber-drawn and heroic again. It makes me appreciate not only the old scene more, but makes me love the Kenobi show more as well. What moments from stories past have been enhanced for you by more recent storytelling? This is a great question, Ethan, and a challenging one.
Yeah.
Because there's so many moments, many of them from the Kenobi show. Were you challenged by this one, Ken?
Yeah, it almost was a little bit of a Star Wars ranked vibe where you're like, oh, yeah, I got it. Oh, wait, I don't got it. I don't remember any scene in Star Wars. Oh, crap. Do I have to watch all of Star Wars to answer this question again? Let me go through. And then you kind of close the laptop, you close your eyes, and you just let it all kind of appear in your soul.
Exactly. This is one of those questions where like I have an inch in my brain where I feel like there's something we mention every other episode that I'm going to forget. And then the second we're done recording, I'll remember like, why didn't I bring up that one that we talk about all the time? Yeah. So, hey, there's another A for you. Anxieties of the Force. But as Ken says, we're going to tap into the Force as it exists here in our real world by just taking a deep breath and sharing the first things that come to mind. So I want to start with you, Ken. Why don't you share a few? I'll share a few. We'll go back and forth. What are some moments that are jumping out to you that have enhanced older storytelling?
Yeah, and the other challenge is Ethan was just so beautiful in his words describing that the Leia Obi-Wan relationship, the moments in both projects there, and I love that. So I try to capture that there. But hey, not for nothing, Vader chasing the Tantive V4 in A New Hope, tacked on now with it's almost like a post-credit scene to Rogue One. That has absolutely added a lot to the moments, to even just the energy of it. I had said this on a podcast a long time ago here in ForceCenter. Almost a confession. It's not necessarily even true right now, but there was a point where I skipped over A New Hope a lot. Whereas like seen it, got it. It's slow to start, the big action, but that kind of slows through the desert. And I've lived with this movie my whole life. There's other parts of Star Wars I want to watch, right? Meaning I love it, acknowledge it. Yeah, again, Sgt. Pepper, one of my favorite albums. I don't remember the last time I've listened to a track 1 to the final track, 12, whatever. It's on the shelf. It's in the Hall of Fame. That was New Hope for me. And Rogue One comes out and great. But then when I had Rogue One in my hands, the physical copy, and I remember putting the Blu-ray in one time, watched it, and I just was like, oh my gosh, for the first time in years, I really want to sit down and watch New Hope, which I did. And you can go to YouTube and find some great smash up edits of, Rogue One into the beginning New Hope and all that stuff. It's great. But that's why I don't want to overlook that moment. Vader in the hallway, what it means, the excitement of seeing that for the first time, of seeing Captain Antilles, seeing Leia, despite any thoughts on what you might have of how it looked, or even if they should have done that. That moment got me, and it just made me want to pick up the story. So it worked. It really worked. Rogue One being a prequel to New Hope being a sequel to Rogue One, whatever jokes you want to make, it really worked. And I have a deeper appreciation for that moment.
No, I really love carrying through Vader's fury and frustration, because that is the nature of the entire Skywalker saga. In particular, is going back to when we were young in the original trilogy was kind of all you have, and Empire a little bit. You see behind the mask, literally. You get the sense that he is becoming more human in Return of the Jedi, but in A New Hope, he's the scary outside force. Yeah. And now we know Anakin so much better. We know Vader so much better that we can kind of ride through the movie from his perspective. And watching the very beginning of A New Hope with him furious that he has all this power in this stupid little, Corvette is getting away from him. It's great to just take that sort of that fury into the beginning of A New Hope.
I love that. You kind of almost describe it as he's like, I can't fail for my boss again. It's a bad day at the office.
Well, and that's one of the things for Kenobi. I think it's there throughout with Vader, but I love how much Kenobi understands that was Anakin's psychology and Vader's psychology of he has this view of himself as the best. Whatever he thought of the Chosen One prophecy, he invested in, I'm better than everyone. And every little fumble is an attack on his self-perception of his identity. And to carry that beat through of like, this can't happen.
Yeah. It's like when I drop a pen on the ground or something and I'm like, oh, this reminds me I'm old because I can no longer bend down and pick it up with ease. That's the Vader thing of like, I am not the indestructible monster. I am failing here. And the deal I took, it ain't looking good.
Yeah.
I love that view.
And it all comes out on Maudie's throat later in
Mm-hmm.
the film. That's a great one. That's an absolutely great one.
Yeah.
And I agree about A New Hope in general. I'm pedantic, so I don't about my viewing. So I unless it's an anniversary or a special occasion, I generally like to watch all of them. Particularly, back in the day when I had my VHS and would watch the original trilogy a lot. But A New Hope starts a little bit slow from modern perspective, but it's the one that keeps getting enriched in different ways by other storytelling.
Yes.
Beat after beat for a long time. My favorite part of watching A New Hope was the Kenobi's hut scene, because it took on all these different nuances with the prequels. Now I really agree with Ethan. That moment of Kenobi smiling, which was always powerful, but now he's taking in both of them. He's come to this sense of peace. He knows where Vader's at. He knows what's at stake. He's prepared for this. So rich. A much smaller moment in A New Hope that has taken on more power because of Kenobi. I've always enjoyed the shot where Luke, restless, teen on the cusp of becoming an adult, wants to go out in the world and start his serious adult life, but he's making his toy model T-16 Skyhopper go zoom zoom zoom. The absent-minded playing with the toy, and this is something you could pull out of it in 1977 if you want. You see the real one in the background. That's him dreaming about getting out there, and he doesn't want to play anymore. He wants it to be real. But now that we know that Kenobi gave that to him as a gift to make him see the world larger and make him want to be an active participant in the world, to encourage a sense of adventure and discovery, and to see that that's still there, that through line is really powerful to me.
I love that. That's zoom, zoom, zoom depth right there.
Some zoom, zoom, zoom depth. What's some others for you?
This is one of the ones where I was like, I think I just have to sit down and watch Clone Wars Season 7. And I just did not have the time to do that. So I put Clone Wars Season 7. It added a lot of emotional layers to the events around the end of Revenge of the Sith. And it's kind of some of the, dare I say, cute stuff they did, where they're like, well, Mace leaves here, Anakin leaves here and Ahsoka walks in, and that conversation in the movie, this happened right before and after. It's kind of, fun and like I say, cute in the way that they had a little fun playing around with it, I think. But it also, I thought, was important. I thought it tied the Clone Wars and that movie we had lived with for a long time. It tied it together in a wonderful way. And anything that can make me, like Ethan's talking about some real depth and emotional stuff here, but anything that can make me go, all right, I want to watch Revenge of the Sith again and see it again for the first time, which is a Star Wars special edition trailer line you and I always reference. But, to go, oh, okay, how does that even work for me? Does it work? And then to go watch the movie and go, yeah, the fact that Ahsoka was right here and was just missed Anakin, or they said their goodbye here. Even some of the stuff with, as Filoni even, I think, kind of apologized for, not a ton of Padme in Season 7, but even what her appearance just added a little bit more depth to me, emotional depth, that I didn't, it's not something I could say that I was walking around needing. I think Revenge of the Sith does what it needs to do on its own. But once you got it, it just was like, oh yeah, I'm very thankful as a Star Wars fan that we get to fill in some of the blanks. I don't need every blank filled in, and I think you've expressed that as well. I don't need every comic to fill out every shadow, but for a big event movie like that, a big part of the saga, to have a new perspective on it, to see around the corner and see how events are affecting characters we love like Ahsoka, Rex, it worked for me, and that's one of those moments I go to.
Yeah, no, I think it makes stuff with Maul richer, knowing that he knew what he had been excluded from in terms of the big Sith plan. It's played as a kind of a fun joke, but I think it's an important beat of canon to me when Obi-Wan makes that joke of when Anakin's kind of making an excuse to go make a holocall, and he's like, well, did you at least say hello to Padme for me? Continuing to play with that idea of like, Kenobi knows there's something going on, and he doesn't know how to handle it, and he doesn't know the depth of it, but he knows there's something going on there. That's a little grace moment that makes me appreciate the scene where he knows to go to Padme to find Anakin, and knows that the child is Anakin's,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. How many do you have total? Did we do a full ranked episode?
We kind of accidentally. I have 4 other ones, but let me just throw this next one in quick because it's kind of similar to what we just talked about. Each Order 66 retelling expands the scope of the trauma for me, and this is why I don't mind revisiting Order 66 from 3,000 angles. I really don't. I've talked before. This is a big traumatic historical event. We have a lot in our own lives that we revisit. That a new doc shows up to say, "Hey, here's this group of people and how they were affected, and here's what it did." I'm there for that. I love that stuff, even if it hurts, and even if you're getting a new view. So Order 66 is, it's a dark time. It's a dark moment, and to explore it, how Cal Kestis dealt with it, how Caleb Doom dealt with it. I hesitate to say I love it because it's dark and traumatic, but it's important. It's important to Star Wars, and it's important to see it's a world, galaxy, saga-changing event. And I like going back and, the supercuts on YouTube as well of here, the ever-expanding supercuts of here's the different versions or different events of Order 66. I watch those because they do affect me. I don't love, I've said before, I don't love a lot of fan edit. I don't watch a lot of that stuff. But when it's done to prop up the emotional core of Star Wars and to shine a light on it, it works for me. And I can even shed a tear on some of them. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
I think that's great. And I think to me, I don't mind seeing it as long as it is telling us something more about the character whose eyes we're seeing it through. I think that, like, when we perhaps our most recent, I've lost track, but seeing it through Grogu's eyes and seeing how it affected him and how it might affect his relationship with Din Djarin going forward, or his how hard it is for him to face the trauma with that beautiful puppet acting when the hammer's ringing out and it seems to be forcing him back into those memories. How much he doesn't. He's with some viewers like, I don't want to revisit that, but I have to. If you can keep seeing it through the character's eyes, Reva was essential. I really agree with you. It is like, it's not just talking about World War II again or talking about 9/11 again. It affected lots of people, lots of different ways.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And as far as like the Grogu one, like I totally understand if people are like, I don't want to go back to it. I've had enough of it, especially if it's traumatic in any way. But if you're on just like the surface level, like boring, more Order 66 stuff, don't you want to? That Grogu stuff was beautiful. In that kind of deep storytelling kind of way, exactly what you're saying and how it affected them. So don't you want more of that? I'd love to explore more of that.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Okay, so I have 4 others. This is a full ranked episode.
You did us good.
I could edit myself, but instead I'll talk fast. I really like the Luke Skywalker's general arc. In my opinion, is that he is young, impetuous. He makes mistakes in the original trilogy, and then he really, really takes what Yoda is trying to impart to him to heart, and what Obi-Wan. But that being a Jedi is a solemn vow. You must have the most serious mind. And my interpretation of his failure with Ben Solo is that he's wrapped so tight trying to do everything right that it causes him to make an instant of a mistake. And then Yoda has to reappear to him and say, hey, when I told you to have the most serious mind, you knocked it out of the park. Now you need to take a deep breath and forgive yourself. Mistakes are okay too. We can learn from mistakes. And that story arc of Luke, I find, going back and watching the original trilogy and scenes in Empire Strikes Back where he gets the most serious mind, the depth of Mark Hamill's wonderful delivery in Return of the Jedi when Yoda says it was unfortunate that you weren't, were ready for the burden, that you rushed off to face Vader. And Luke says, I'm sorry. It's so deep. And it's like that moment. It's the old Simpsons joke of like, that's the moment that his heart broke. It's like, that's the moment where he committed to like, I gotta be really careful. I really can't make mistakes like that again. I can't. so the connection between those stories is really powerful to me.
That's a great one, and yeah, that Yoda Last Jedi scene and sequence just works on so many levels, and so thankful we have it.
Yeah. This is one that I think a lot of people have talked about. I think we've talked about, but Ben Solo's name. I mean, The Force Awakens is not as old as getting refreshed on something from 1977 Star Wars. But there's a lot of like, well, why is he Ben? Is that just because of the name we recognize? And Leia never met him. All that stuff. Is it Ben Quadraneros?
Right.
But now that moment of Han yelling out Ben, we have the benefit of the Kenobi show of knowing that Leia did have a relationship with Ben, and he is the person who brought her and Han and Luke together ultimately, but also her kind of first steps into a larger world were with Ben. So there's the Ben part of it, but you and I have talked about this a lot. Also just Solo of like, well, why isn't he or Solo Organa or whatever? We haven't seen this, but my sort of headcanon is that here's a name that was just sort of foist on Han from a disinterested Imperial officer with a nasal drip. And Han kind of takes it on as this like, I'm Solo. I'm alone in this galaxy. And he folds that into his own personal legend, his own personal view of himself. But the idea of this name that was sort of flimsy and meaningless, that all of the legitimate good actions that Han Solo took in that name, by the time he has a son, he's made that name mean something to the point where he and Leia want to give it to his son because this name means something now. This is the name of a hero who helped save the galaxy. So I love that from, all these different sources, the name Ben Solo has been given all this power to me.
I love that, pulling from those things and just, I think it's fair to say Force Awakens coming up on 10 years before we know it. It's classic storytelling.
Yep. So what are your others?
I went to one recent one we were discussing, and when we were breaking down The Princess and the Scoundrel novel by Beth Revis, you and I both had kind of a similar reaction to the beginning of it. In the first couple pages with Leia and looking at the empty helmets and who was in them and the weight of this big victory. It was this wonderful deep turning of the page to literally the smoke has not even cleared on both the Empire and the fireworks of the celebration the night before. And it was, it's not, it's an expansion of the idea, but now going, when I revisit Return of the Jedi, which is one of those great casual, put it on, it's a Saturday and I want some Star Wars on. My whole life, that's where it ends. The story ends. And then I would dream about what was next. Now we get these kind of answers. And now it's, I can imagine. And because I've read it, it's still in my brain more than, on the page or on the screen, like a comic book or something. So that's why I love that book. One of the major reasons I love that book, I should say. And we both celebrated it here. And if you haven't taken it in, I almost don't want to go into details, but just right from the beginning, it's the Leia and the burden that's been on her soul for so long, slowly releasing, but asking herself, is it? And yes, I know. And in canon, we got 18 more months to the Battle of Jakku and all those things. But like, it's a big victory moment, but it comes with a lot of weight, a lot of scars, a lot of damage, and it's well done, well written.
Yeah, I love that book, and almost every scene adds some nuance. Looking backward to Return of the Jedi, looking forward to the sequel trilogy. It's so good. Her raging over the Vader connection, and treating that as a fresh, open wound is incredibly powerful, and connects to the novel Bloodline very well. All sorts of stuff. There's another one for me is In Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray. I love that that moment of accidental force use is included, where she and her fella at the time make an impossible jump, and Leia's not queuing into I did something, but the way it's written, we the audience can tell that I think about that when I watch the Return of the Jedi scene of like, you have a power that I could never have,
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's always been there, and she isn't open to it yet, but it's always been there is great.
I love that there. Another one from mine that I've mentioned before, but I realize this goes back to 2017. So again, we're a ways out from it, but I wanted to highlight, I've talked before of really loving the Eclipse short story in the first From Certain Point of View collection, released in 2017. This is written by Madeline Rue, who I've the pleasure of being friends with over the years. And she wrote the final moments of Bail and Brea Organa on Alderaan as the Death Star eclipses out the sun and destroys the planet. And it's such a brief little second in A New Hope. And it carries weight. We see Leia react, but Leia's got to, get up and run and put a blanket on Luke and all those kind of things that we know and talk about. But to just know that those final moments are burned in my soul. It's heartbreaking. And then now to spend more time with them in Kenobi, it adds even more heartbreak and more pain. And what I love about it too, that I remember at the time talking with Madeline when she was given the opportunity to write this, she said, "Well, I'd like to write a female character," and they were like, "Well, Beru and Leia are already spoken for, and that's kind of all there is, right?" And it highlighted that problem. But so she went, "Well, what about Brea? We don't spend a lot of time, and they were in the film essentially." And to expand that, it's a beautiful thing. So if y'all haven't had a chance to go back and revisit that Eclipse in the 2017 From a Certain Point of View, do it, and you might cry every time Alderaan explodes.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. And hey, those burning skeletons are a little bit more powerful in A New Hope. And now we spent a little bit more time with Owen and Beru. You successfully caused me to remember the one that I was tickling the back of my brain, going, remember that one, because it's also from the Certain Point of View. It's the story where Yoda is watching over everything, and he's really excited to train Anakin's offspring because just perfect Jedi, a serious mind, commitment, big heart, flowing and organic, everything you need to be a Jedi. Leia, not Luke.
Yes.
And particularly when Luke shows up and he's just like, this guy's nothing but a bucket of problems. And obviously he grows to see Luke's strengths and all that. But like, especially in Empire, when there's another, like, that's become in my heart essential canon that Yoda's like, please, Leia's perfect.
I love that. I love that stuff. Great.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I have one more, but you
go for it.
Okay.
Wrap it up. I'm going to edit myself. You go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Ethan, for making this special Star Wars Ranked episode emerge. Newer one, Andor's presentation of Mon Mothma has added so much depth going back to Return of the Jedi, even the fleeting moments we get with her and, other content, Revenge of the Sith. We know the deleted scenes, but of course, Rebels added depth, right? So her speech in Star Wars Rebels is a giant moment in Star Wars and maybe rethinking character. But now we have even more. And now I know that maybe when she's given that speech on the Ghost, that she's also like, and I left my husband Perrin. Like, there's like so much else to deal with now. And thankfully we have more of that character. So I'm always thankful for that.
Left there's a possibility in my mind that it was the Rebellion or Perrin, and Satine's Lament had something to say about Perrin. That's my wild Andor prediction.
There you go.
Yeah, the blaster, Satine's Lament, in case anybody's like, I haven't heard of that song. Great question, Ethan. We could go on forever, and we will the rest of ForceCenter. This is fun because it's the reflections of this question that Ethan asked is going to show up in some other questions. We got a big one next, though, from patron James Pasqualucci. James has been asking this question for a while, but frankly, it required research, so it took us a little while to get to it. So thank you for your patience, James. Here's what he has to say. Hello there, ForceCenter. Bit of a different question today that revolves around one of Grand Admiral Thrawn's favorite subjects, art. Specifically, the art of Star Wars Celebration. Each celebration from at least 2019 through 2023 has had art shows bringing in various pieces from professional artists to display their love of this galaxy in their own talented and unique way. Many of the choices are just breathtaking, and I was curious to know what your favorite pieces were and why. What themes, moments, or emotions do they evoke in you? Can't wait to hear your choices. I put the links to the specific StarWars.com articles below for your convenience. May the Force be with you. I needed the help of the Force to go through all these and choose just a few. If you're listening, if you're at home and you want to go through and join us, we are going to be referencing some art. You can just Google official Star Wars Celebration art, and these should pop up. Thank you, James, for providing the links. So any big picture thoughts on this, Ken, before we dive into the specific years?
It was fun to kind of research. I missed a lot of these pieces. So a lot of them is like based on maybe how I felt now. And it's such a, this is kind of what you'd hang on your wall type of question, which might be different from what I might just appreciate seeing on display somewhere else. So that's what I took into this.
Yeah, I had the great challenge of don't pick just the Obi-Wan posters. In a couple of them, I realized like, ooh, that's my favorite one for this year, and that's my favorite one for that year. That's the same artist. Okay, let's vary it up a little bit. Yeah, and I some of these people were really excited about on social media, so I saw them getting passed around. It's sadly for me not a part of Celebration that I have been able to indulge in, so I haven't got a chance to go see them all for myself. So this was fun to scroll through them. That said, let's go to 2019 to Chicago, a place where you and I had a great time, lots of fun memories. What poster did you pick from this list?
Yeah, hold on. Hold on, folks. Why don't you go? I have to, I jumped to 2020 because I didn't copy and paste the right note in. All right.
Oh,
you're up.
Okay. And I tried to pick two from most years in case we picked the same thing. Yeah. And if not, so be it. But this one just really jumped out at me. It is by an artist named Jason Christman, and it is entitled Cantina. It is a long, super widescreen, thin image, and it is a depiction of the cantina. And hey, we've all seen lots of depictions of the cantina, but this one is arranged almost like a triptych, a piece of artwork broken into three pieces. It's flattened out. On one end, you've got Han and Greedo. On the other end, you've got some of the infamous denizens, including Moman and Dunn, Lack Sivrak, the werewolf who's been admitted. You got Luke and 3PO and R2 entering, but right dead center, you have Chewie and Obi-Wan, and it's all dark, it's all shadowy, it's all profiles, and the only beam of light is Obi-Wan's blade. So this spoke to me because it's an absolutely classic scene, reimagined. But I've just been so obsessed with the choice of Obi-Wan to ignite his blade in this moment. Back in 77, it was like, well, we need to introduce the lightsabers and see them in action. We need to establish that they actually do sever things so that when Obi-Wan disappears, you're not just like, well, I guess that's what happens when you get hit by a lightsaber. So all sorts of practical reasons. But with all the storytelling built up around it, I just find it so powerful that Obi-Wan's like, Vader's on the trail of his kids. This rebellion's happening. I got to go back out in the world. It's time for the Jedi to return, and I don't care. I'm pulling out the lightsaber in front of everybody. I don't care. That moment has taken on more meaning for me, and it just glowing in the middle. This is definitely the one I'd put on my wall.
Yeah, this was on my list as well. So well said on the reasons why. But it's kind of this is kind of one of the pieces I when I'm like thinking of what goes on my wall versus what hangs in a museum. This is the version. It's just something. It's not straight from the movie, but it's about the movie, and it takes all the things we love about this scene. It puts them in a fun tableau there, including, is that O'Hare actually blocking the droids?
Oh, he's got it. That's a pointing finger.
Yeah.
Your droids.
Yes, yeah. There he is. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry to, for those who aren't following along, it's a great photo. And yeah, it would fit because of its size. I might try to look up if I can get my hands on this one. It would go great over a door.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is gorgeous. Gorgeous. Dangerous. All right. What do you pick from 2019?
Yeah. So that was one of my choices, and there's a lot of great ones, but I went straight. You could almost predict this one to Brian DeGuire's celebrating 20 years of pod racing. which is just a
Yeah.
classic race poster. Almost as if Anakin can hang this one on his wall. It's got Ben Guarneros. It's got Sebulba. It's the Bunta Eve Classic presented by the mighty Jabba the Hutt, featuring Gascano, Dudbolt, Teamto, Paglius. It's a racing photo, and this captures the spirit. It's 20 years after. This was the year we were celebrating Phantom Menace. It's in Galaxy. You could, like I said, imagine hanging this on the wall. But also, this is something I would absolutely love to have, celebrating just the spirit and the energy of what the pod race was. It kind of explodes out of the frame there. So that was my first choice.
I love it. And I love things like this that, on first glance, like, especially if you put it in Orbesh, it fits in. Mm-hmm. But then it's got those sort of meta textual things of, I love it when it uses actual dialogue from the film. I love that it says very fast, very dangerous. Like,
yeah.
In this context, it's like an ad for it, very different than the context that Qui-Gon said it in.
Yeah, exactly. Love that. Yeah. So again, this might just be a shopping spree for me.
Yeah, a dangerous question. So before we buy all these posters, I'm not even going to share my runner-up. We're going to move on to the 2020 art show in the great spirit that this continued during a dark time for the rebellion, as it were, in 2020. So I only picked one. We'll see if we picked the same one, Ken. Why don't you go ahead and start?
All right, so I picked two. I went to first Meltdown on Hoth by Chris Trevis. Which is a very kind of realistic. It looks like like you could have seen it on screen. The Princess Leia is so good, but it's Hoth Leia, very upset looking at 3PO, who's holding her old New Hope princess dress, which has been soaked because they turned the heat too high in her chambers, which is the great little. Scene that happens off camera as we meet up with R2 and 3PO again at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, and the artist explained his obsession with those type of scenes, and this scene in particular, especially saying there was an illustrated children's book published in 1998 that tells this story. I'm going to have to seek that out because this has always been one of my favorite little references as just, what happened in that chamber that got them all aflutter, and it's a great photo, and it just symbolizes a little bit of what this movie is about for Leia. Like, she is a princess, she is royalty, but she is Hoth gear Leia from this point on until she gets to Cloud City. But love that. So that one's on my list.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I love. Yeah, the sort of the fan relationship with it, that it's the dress from the past and she's moving into the future. And yeah, we've talked many times about this is the movie where Leia gets to be in charge of the rebellion, as well, not carrying secret missions, but, wearing fatigues like everybody else and getting stuff done. I also like that it's a very, without being a direct pastiche, it's very Norman Rockwell vibes.
Very much so. Yeah.
The posing, the composition, and the sense of humor of it.
Yes.
This is breaking 3PO's heart, and he's apologizing up and down, and Leia's just like, I don't need this. I don't need this today.
Don't need this. Yeah.
That's great. Well, we'll see if the one that I picked is your other one. I went with The Legend of Lando. I'm such a sucker for anything that looks like pulp magazine, old paperback, that kind of vibe. I just love it. It's got these kind of torn edges vibe. It's got a little bit of the sort of the dot. I forget the actual name. What comic books used to be colored with. But it's got a little bit of that dot pattern to the way it's illustrated. It's a picture. If you don't have it in front of you, Han's in it's Lando and Han seeing each other on Bespin again for the first time, and in the foreground on the left is a silhouette of Han's hip and his hand reaching toward his blaster, and then Lando looking cool, grabbing his cape, Lobot right behind him, the beautiful oranges and browns and burnt siennas of Bespin in the background. But then it says in this cool font, The Legend of Lando, Gambler, Swindler, Administrator. It's just taking this scene that's loaded with all this tension, loaded with all this additional meaning as we get more and more story told, and turning it into this sort of intriguing paperback you'd see. If you didn't know any of these characters, you'd be like, "Ooh, where are they? Who's that bald guy with the computer on his head? Is the guy in the foreground going to shoot Lando? What's going on?" It's so exciting.
Yeah, no, this is a cover of a Lando adventure for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, swindler, bookkeeper. Yeah.
Exactly. Gambler, swindler, manager of FedEx. Yeah, pretty cool. Well, did you want to share your other one?
Yeah, that was a great one. I chose Dawn Murphy's piece, "The Queen's Wardrobe," which is pretty simple and direct. It is all of Queen Amidala's outfits and Padme's outfits from The Phantom Menace, and there is 11 of them. Wow, there's just so many. Which is I just love that aspect of the movie. It's got some of the ones that Sabe wore. Just talking to my partner, my fiance Grace, like she loves Phantom Menace, and she was younger when it came out, but she's like the outfits, the costume design for Padme just like are just gorgeous and next level, and has always been, and it's been part of the appeal for her and just in terms of shaping her love of fashion and how much attention she paid to it. And so I think that's I don't think it's an underrated part of Amidala, the character, but it's something that never should not be celebrated. And this piece of art absolutely celebrates it. And I'd like these kind. There's a lot of, again, talking about what we want on our walls. I have a piece I picked up from Downtown Disney a couple years ago. We've talked about on the show that has a lot of the female characters from all of the movies, Padme to Phasma type of range, to Jyn Erso. And I just love those kind of pieces, direct and straightforward in what it's saying to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this is just a service, because you can Google, Padme's dresses. And I know so many fans who have them memorized, and cosplayers who've made them all, and have the names for them, which I don't know all the names that cosplayers use that have solidified into this is this dress. But this is just a service to just be able to see them all in a row. I love it. And I got to learn the names of some of my favorites.
Yeah. So there, love that one.
All right, let's power on then to the year 2022. Another celebration that we were lucky to experience. What do you go to here, Ken?
Well, Dawn Murphy did another one called The Senator's Wardrobe, and all of the Padme outfits from Attack of the Clones. So I would absolutely want this on the wall here. Just give me the whole series. Give me all the Padme outfits. I love the character of Padme. I think she has a lot of depth to her, a lot of different sides to her personality, a lot of different sides to things she's trying to do, and includes maybe some of the obstacles around her and within her. So these outfits have all of it. It's Padme explored, and I really love that. So yeah, that's my first choice. But going to my second choice, you picked a Jason Crispin piece earlier with the New Hope Cantina. He also did one, and this one that was the Death Star. And I don't know how it could fit on a wall. I have to get the right size. This almost could be a back of a door. You could get it that big. Yeah. So it starts from the top, the Death Star briefing room. Then it goes to the observation room looking at Alderaan. Then it goes to the tractor beam and the actual. Yeah, you see this one. Then the laser, and then where 3PO and R2 are hiding. Then where Obi-Wan and Vader are fighting. Then the hallway with Han and Chewie. Then the swinging across the chasm there with Luke and Leia. Trash compactor. Where they took 3PO, or excuse me, Chewie, the convention center, and it's wonderful. And I just love it. And I want this. Maybe I'd get a floor carpet version. Or just put it down a long hallway.
A large, painful back tattoo of this one would be phenomenal. But yeah, it really just captures the fantasy and the fun of the Death Star. Now, how all these little scenes showed us little chunks of it that they could afford to create on set, but the imagination of it is huge. Also, I love the senator's wardrobe because it's really fun to compare to the queen's wardrobe and see the different style and a little bit of a different color emphasis. So many more muted tones in the senators. I think a little foreshadowing of some of the hard times to come, including her just hanging out on Tatooine dress, which I absolutely love. The blue one that looks very woven. Anyway, great picks. For myself, I picked two here. If I'm on the correct year, managing it all. Yep. The first one is the first one. It is called Reflective Power, and this is an image of a young woman here in the real world, clearly in like a parent's closet area with a mirror that you could replace with that Death Star picture. But with clothes strewn about, just some random stuff, a scarf, and some random little horns or suction cups or something in her hand. But in the mirror, we're seeing Ahsoka with the double blades. It's, we talk a lot about, the infamous Star Wars Kid video, was cruelly made fun of because we are all Star Wars Kid. It's one of the powers of Star Wars to see ourselves in this fantasy, to see the fun of it, but to also see the inspiration of it. And this is just such a great, fresh vision of that for this young woman to see herself as Ahsoka and the fun of that and the fantasy of that, but also everything that Ahsoka stands for and the idea of this kid getting to have that experience of I could be brave like her, I could be strong like her, I could be committed to helping people like her. It's really powerful and well done.
No, I agree. It's a great one indeed, and kind of why this stuff exists, I think.
Yep, exactly. And then because I can't stop myself, I'll throw in another Obi-Wan one. I'm scrolling down. It's called The Junland Wastes, and I am almost there. Oh, there it is. This one is by Malcolm Tween. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't the same artist. But this is a very 70s fantasy kind of vibe. And it is just old Ben with lightsaber ignited and a probe droid. It's just that simple, but it's this, imagination of he had to be active. He had to be protecting himself. So I don't have anything more to say about that than clearly Kenobi obsessed.
No, it's a great piece. It almost, it's done in a style that might hang on the back of your sofa, like your grandparents had a piece of art.
Yeah. It almost looks like it's so different, but it also looks just like, is that a cover of a Conan book? Like it's very fantasy. I love it. All right, we are going to move on to the year 2023, the wonderful celebration in London. What did you pick here?
I picked one photo here, Twilight on Endor by Sandra Kamens. It's a traditional watercolor painting, she says, with a few digital touches. And it is just Bright Tree Village with the flames going there. It's twilight. The sun has gone down, so they need set the fires ablaze and dance if they want to. And there's a little Ewok in the foreground kind of looking at it all. I have over the years become obsessed with Bright Tree Village even more than I was when I was 7. I just think I appreciate the Ewoks more, appreciate their culture because of things like the book Princess and the Scoundrel, and we're still learning more about them. And this is just a great simple photo that I would love to hang and pay tribute to the furry little teddy bears that helped take down an empire.
It's really beautiful. It is just it's capturing the magic of Bright Tree Village, and I really like the colors. They're really not super impressionistic, but it really evokes some of the colors in some of those paintings. It's absolutely beautiful. So that one was on my list, but then I was pretty sure you were going to pick it. So. My jaw dropped open at one of them, Ken. Like I love a lot of these, but the one that just blew me away is Hope by Ashraf Omar. It's a little bit more vertical. Doesn't need to be a full bathroom mirror, but I think it really struck me because it's a lot of images that I would normally like, but combined in this different way. If you can't see it, it is celebrating Return of the Jedi. It is a mechanical hand. That one would assume to be Luke's, not covered by the synth skin, but a mechanical hand floating his new lightsaber hilt, and it is kind of coming apart in ways that we've seen when Jedi use the Force to bring all the pieces of their lightsaber together. But where the Kyber crystal would be, there's this beautiful rebel symbol. And then the word hope is interlaced with the lightsaber. So if somebody described to me like, yay, you know, it's a lightsaber, but the rebellion symbol is worked in there and it's got the word hope, I'd be like, that sounds great. I like all four of those things. I've seen them a lot. This combined all of these things in a new, in powerful way to me. I love this one. This is one of the, that's a risk for me to purchase and put on a wall.
Oh yeah, right. I think a lot of these are. No, it's a beautiful one there, and it's just simple in its message, and that's what I love about that one.
Yeah, and I love that it's just a surprising choice to have it not be a gloved hand, but to have it be this fully mechanical hand. To me, it's like, yep, life isn't perfect. Sometimes you got a mechanical hand, but
So
there's
true.
still hope. So true, so relatable. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with one more question and a Power of the Light Side back in a moment. And we are back. We've got a question from Twitter. This comes to us from Kevin Booth. Kevin says, greetings. Pre-episode 9, had you asked me what I needed to see in the film, my unequivocal answer would have been Rey firing up a new lightsaber and laying waste to half the First Order in the most gratuitous action scene since Uma Thurman got a new sword. However, having watched the movie, says Kevin, I am eternally grateful I had nothing to do with making it. The film showed me how kind Rey was and how that helped her stand up to the dark side, not join it. Question time. Have you had a similar experience with any Star Wars content, wanting something, but in hindsight, being spectacularly thankful it didn't happen? This is a great question. It speaks to me. It speaks to my love of Rise of Skywalker. I know that it's a film that still divides a lot of people, but I remember just being blown away by getting to see Rey be truly powerful and see stopping the transport in midair and seeing that's a large amount of power to reckon with. That's a large responsibility, but being just deeply moved by the Vex's scene of like, but that's her instinct is to try to help first, to think through some another sentient being's trauma and being like, is there a reason that they're in trauma? Can I maybe help them? So I really agree with Kevin's analysis of the film. So I wanted to throw that out there. Ken, do you have any big picture thoughts before we get into our examples where we were happy we were wrong?
Yeah, it seems like it's a question that's more about recent times. This is where Speculate Responsibly was born out of. We're in this era of everyone's going to sit down on a panel show or a podcast and wonder what's next, and that's not going to stop. And I think that's overall still a good thing. But in thinking about it, no, I definitely had some thoughts back in the day of what was coming next. So that's kind of where I went to.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go to it. What were your thoughts back in the day?
Well, I've mentioned before, I was so wrong's not even the word. I just so misunderstood what the fall of Vader would be in 2005. I mean, this is even after seeing Technicolor. So going into Revenge of the Sith, I was one of the ones who just wanted to see the power fantasy that played out in that hallway in Rogue One, which is Vader kind of going full Vader. Doesn't get him what he wants, which of course is the lesson and the theme there. But going into Revenge of the Sith, I spent a whole lifetime going, well, Vader helped the Emperor hunt down the Jedi. So we're going to see him just slicing Jedi. And isn't that going to be cool? He's just going to be murdering Jedi. And instead, we got what we got. He fell into this trap. It was about attachment. It was sad. It was heartbreaking. It was pathetic. I always go back to my complaints in 2005. It's just so pathetic. He just drops to his knees. Yeah, that's exactly it. I couldn't even see what was on the screen. It's not like it was like the themes were hidden behind Palpatine's bookshelf there. That's what was going on. And then for Order 66, you do have this great shot. It is a great shot of him marching into the temple with the what we now know as the 501st, like Vader's fist. Like, it's great. And then he goes to Swordsman Demon and he kills the younglings. And I was upset about that. and you still to this day, I run into people or you see the jokes about that. And I'm one that thinks that's Vader just trying to destroy his past, as brutal as that might be, as disgusting as that might be, and yes, as pathetic as that might be. It wasn't a show of power. Vader's fall was what he thought was getting power, but it wasn't, right? And it seems so simple now. We spent a lot of time discussing it. Other people discuss it. And I love other people discovering it for themselves or exploring it for themselves whenever they get to it as a fan. But for me in 2005, I was so wrong and I was so angry about it. I'm glad I was so wrong. I was glad I was so off, because what's there is what is needed, and what is the truth of that story.
Yeah, well, this is great, because between you and Kevin and myself, we're going to every trilogy in the Skywalker saga. Because the first one that comes to my mind is something I've definitely mentioned before. I've included it in stand-up bits and monologues about Star Wars I've done in performances of, being of the age to wonder in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, what would happen. And it wasn't old enough to understand, like, well, the movie's probably not going to end on a bummer. I was just invested in the story of it. And I love Luke Skywalker. I saw myself in Luke Skywalker, and he failed in Empire Strikes Back, but I would debate with my brother, like, but he's going to turn things around. And the question was only, can Luke become powerful enough to defeat Vader? And I think it was because there was the image in the dream on Dagobah in the cave, the vision that I probably only half remembered.
Right.
But I was just convinced as a young kid, Luke's going to be real powerful, and he's going to cut Vader's head off. And in some ways, it's perfect, because it was the lesson that Lucas was trying to get to. Is sometimes a story is good and evil, and sometimes somebody has made a choice and they just need to be stopped. But that's not always the story. And the idea that it's not a binary, it is that Luke could do what is right for himself, what is right for his father, making a different and unexpected choice and refusing to follow in his father's footsteps. I was young, so I'm not going to beat myself up too much, but much like Kevin about the sequels and much like you about the prequels, I had little kid bloodlust of like, Luke's going to get him. And I think that's powerful, that for all three of us, some of our first things is leaning a little bit too much into the cool action and not, and wanting not wanting the truth of the character, and then being grateful that we got the truth of the character.
Yeah, absolutely. And the story, telling the story it needs to tell. Love that there.
Do you have any others that you want to share?
I was going to touch on, I think you have to, and we've done entire episodes of it, and it'll always come up. But yeah, Luke going in The Last Jedi, I mean, that's perhaps the biggest one. It was so big that some people have not recovered. And I get it. I get it. And as positive, quote unquote, positive as I or you or Jennifer can be about Star Wars, and we go on, and at the time in 2017 into 2018, defending this movie to people that wanted to tear it down, all those kind of things. We've all been there. We know the pop culture history. I understand it, because I walked out of my first viewing going, I wasn't sure, because that was not what I wanted or expected. I always say I weigh what happened to Luke in Last Jedi versus, all right, then what's my answer? If I wasn't surprised that he died, or moved on to the next plane, if you will. I wasn't fully surprised at that. But then, like, cool, whenever Luke's ending comes about in these films, how did I see it? And it was like I regressed to 2005. High atop a flaming X-wing with the green lightsaber ignited, slicing heads off as he goes, taking in your childhood dream. Just put it all in it, and it's like, that wasn't it. That wasn't 1983's Luke at the end. It wasn't what this series wrestles with. And I think now you and I and so many others are in tune to these themes in Star Wars, which, by the way, I still think are very simple. George was not like, I got something special for you. George was like, I just got something for you. And I don't want you to hear it. And that carries out into Star Wars storytelling in our modern age. And it's a litmus test moment for a lot. And I don't mean to be an a-hole about that or anything. It's like, if you can wrestle around with that Luke's ending and come out on the other side of it, at least having an understanding, even if you don't have the appreciation, but having an understanding of why it was done that way, I think you might be in a better spot. Going forward in Star Wars storytelling. It's just something I really feel strongly about. But I needed a moment. And this also is the thing of like what Kevin's talking about here. This is about something you and I have discussed before as well, Joseph. Take that moment. We are in the era of let me whip out my Instagram live and do my out of the theater reaction. Let me just do my trailer. And I get it because it's wonderful click getting content. But that is... it's not how art's to be appreciated. You can have your excitement, do your videos. Oh my gosh, I just came out and here's this. But then, wrestle with it a little, think about it a little bit, think on it a bit. And that's what this is, the heart of this question is for me.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that. And I always say about Last Jedi, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted outside of, I wanted Luke to be a powerhouse because I felt like, I never like it in stories where, the ability of a Jedi is diminished too much, or Superman is depowered. Because always to me is like, well, part of the fantasy is, what if you did have bonkers levels of power? That always sounds like such an inviting fantasy to us because life is really hard. But then when you do have bonkers level of power, that you feel that responsibility. And I wanted the follow through of Luke trained his whole life and became an absolute powerhouse. Now, what does he do with it? And I think that's why I ended up walking out of Last Jedi so satisfied. Is like that's kind of what Luke was wrestling with. Of like, I believe if Luke wanted to get himself to Crate, he could have gone there and he probably could have just made a little gesture and every one of those AT-ATs would have crumbled. He probably could have done that. He's probably that big of a powerhouse, but he was deciding how to use his power. And I got to see him use this, amazing powerhouse ability that's communicated in the film of this is a massive power level, but look at how he's choosing to use it and that's where the heart of it came from.
Yeah, absolutely. The heart of it.
The heart. I'll throw one more out there because I think I spoke on it a decent amount on podcasts and certainly in person. When Palpatine was revealed to be returning in Rise of Skywalker in the trailer, even that weekend at Chicago Celebration, a lot of people were like, I'm excited he's back, but I want to know how. And I was really on about like, hey, how it's always, we've seen in other storytelling that the Jedi pass into a different realm and exist only to help others, but the Sith haunt things. They possess things because they're not willing to let go. And I kind of, in conversations and in my own headcanon, invented this idea that Palpatine's malignant haunting spirit was going to be like the MacGuffin. Like maybe it starts with Rey and Kylo both sense this great power and it brings them to the Death Star ruins, and his spirit is in some object that he collected, and it's almost the MacGuffin. And I really thought that the film was going to spend a chunk on how he came back. And I remember being blown away. The crawl starts and like the dead speak, he's back. And then I saw two human butts because the people who were sitting next to us were coming in late. Those will always be attached in my mind of the dead speak. Wait, Palpatine's back. There's two butts in my face, leaning around to see what the dead had to say. But I know that's still a controversial choice. I know it still bumps for a lot of people that there isn't enough of an explanation of how Palpatine came back, and Poe's line is flat and all those things. I really get and acknowledge that. But I am happy that I was wrong about that, because I don't think it is Palpatine's story. It's Rey and Kylo's in this. Palpatine is a embodiment of the dark side. The dark side is always going to come back, and it's always going to want to control everything. It's always going to want to convince you that you are just as rotten as it. And so I think it really works for me that Palpatine's just back, and we got more details on the how and in expanded fiction. But for me, it's in the film. It's the darkness, the haunting spirit, the clinging of the dark side mixed with just great Frankenstein-like, genre stuff of pulling from like the dark science, and it all works for me. And I'm glad we didn't spend a bunch of the movie running after some bit and bob that his soul was trapped in that he gets accidentally released. I'm glad that it just starts with its foot on the gas and the dead speaking. And I really recognize that one's controversial and people disagree about it, but that's an example of sometime I was happy to be wrong.
Yeah, I'm glad you're wrong too, because but you pitched that way. We were talking about the podcast, and the hauntings and everything. It's absolutely tantalizing. But one of the most important things that I think you just said is this isn't Palpatine's story. This is Rey and Kylo's story, among others. And I know even that bumps for folks with Poe and Finn. And I know there was a lot left on the table with those characters. I actually really agree with that. But in terms of Palpatine, love the way it goes. And I love the boom, he's here. We're going, because this is what it's about. One I'll say, too, just in a general sense, Andor, the series. I was, I'll put it on my resume. I was one of the first to say, no, this series is going to be great. We need this series. It's the formation of the rebellion. Oh, my God, there's so much meat in this bone. While other people in my life were like, oh, I don't even want why. We didn't ask for this. And so here we are. The series is relatively well received. It could even be, awards dangling around its neck as a series soon. Who knows? But it did not go the way I thought. Tony Gilroy took what could have been a spy thriller, formation of the rebellion in a kind of a way we knew, and he and his team went in a different direction, but it kind of landed in the same spot. And you feel that very early on, and it's a different kind of story, which is why a lot of people love it, and why maybe actually some people do struggle with it. But if my version, which might have been kind of the version that was kicking around in the beginning. I'm happy with what we got now, because it created some wonderful, powerful moments. I still would like a straight up spy thriller, straight up formation of the rebellion as you kind of know it, and pulling in from different pieces of canon and lore and all those kind of things. And we might get that in season 2, but season 1 was very uniquely its own thing, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was probably pitched a little bit more focusing on the espionage. I still think there are lots of espionage. There is lots of the tension of will somebody's identity be exposed? Will they say the exact wrong word to the wrong person at the wrong time, wrong eye line at a party, and you're discovered? I think that sense of paranoia and danger is still there, but it wasn't as much of like, and this week Andor's mission is to retrieve this. And I'm curious to see if it goes that way in season 2.
Yeah, it might change a little bit, but yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Excellent question. Thank you, Kevin. It's nice to be able to work through things. It's nice to be able to be surprised. We're going to wrap up this episode with a Power of the Light Side segment. If you are a patron and you want to share just something joyful of any kind, a memory, a beat, a moment, a character, anything joyful from Star Wars, you can do that by going to the section of Patreon that all the posts are on, scrolling down quite a ways, and hey, you will find the image that we discussed in our first question today of Kenobi smiling at the Skywalker twins, and that's where to put these submissions for Power of the Light Side. Our submission today comes from Paul Denuzzo. Paul says, the other night, my wonderful wife bought me tickets to my local city symphony doing a night of Star Wars. I sat entranced as the symphony played suites that were reportedly curated by the maestro himself. It ended with Leia's theme, the Imperial March, and the throne room and finale. It really took me back to my one and only celebration, 2017, the 40th anniversary panel, which ended with a surprise appearance from Oma Trace himself doing the conducting. I teared up then, and I teared up tonight. It still amazes me after all these years what John Williams' music can do to me. It transports me to this happy childhood place, and suddenly the skies are their brightest blue, the sun is its brightest yellow, and there just is nothing in the world that could possibly be wrong. My heart soars. Indy, Superman, Jurassic Park, and more are pretty close, but it's the Star Wars music that is moi, chef's kiss. That is a great Power of the Light Side, celebrating not just the music, but its power over the years and the power of seeing it, hearing it, experiencing it live with people we love. Ken, you've got to experience John Williams' music a couple times in person. What does this draw out of you?
Tears, emotion. There's a reason that guy Johnny Williams went on to have a good career. He knows what he's doing, and this is what good music can do. Yeah, and at the Dial of Destiny premiere, they did a surprise John Williams concert. He did 3 songs, all in the Indiana Jones world, of course, and there you can experience it any way you want. I want to be clear about that. A lot of people pulled out their phones and recorded it. Totally fine. I just leaned forward and took it in with a big smile on my face. One, you get to experience it and see, but then the music takes over. I've seen him at the Hollywood Bowl a few times, and I think the first time I saw him, he was playing. It was a lot of Force Awakens stuff, and it was on the screen, the package. And by the way, our friend of the show, our pal Adam Witt, works on some of that stuff, and I just started crying because I'm like, God damn, I love Star Wars. You know? And it pulls it out of you in the most wonderful and surprising way. And yeah, that Star Wars Celebration 2017 panel, I was there. I didn't know PLD back then. I know him now a little bit. There, we could have cried together. PLD, something special. But yeah, love it. Love this. Chef's kiss, indeed.
Yeah, I think to me there's this levels of power to hearing the Star Wars music live. A great layer if John Williams himself is conducting, because it is this weird, like, how could this one human, yes, working in concert with all the artists who recorded it and the films as the inspiration and all that, but just that idea, like, that one guy. He brought all this into my life, is powerful if you're lucky enough to get to see him in person. But then there's the our long history. Even if you've been a fan for 6 months, you still have a long history with the music in your relationship to the films, and that is all being summed up. But then the music's good, and if there was never a movie called Star Wars, I would probably cry at Binary Sunset. Because it sounds like the noises my soul wants to make when I'm looking out wistful, concerned it won't all come together. But then this deep knowledge somewhere deep inside me that, yes, it will all come together. It is all okay. That's like the most essential power of it. It is that these songs capture the true emotion of these characters. And even if we didn't have this wonderful layer of that's Leia's theme, and here's everything Leia means to me, her theme is powerful just as music, stripped away of anything else.
Yeah. And over the years, you mentioned Leia's theme, like that crept up on me as one of my favorites, which is weird to say, right? Because you're drawn to different things when you see the movies the first time. Like I probably liked the Ewoks parade more than Leia's theme at one point, because I was 7, and that brought me to a special spot. This is why Yoda's theme, The Sound of Enlightenment, has just grown over the years. I think at post Last Jedi, I just really appreciated the feeling of home that music means to me. The feeling of comfort, the feeling of having someone around you and knowing your way forward. And so, and that's been part of the journey as well. And when you see, whether it's Williams himself or just your as Paul says, your local city symphony, when you see it play, when you see them play, something might pop out of you that's surprising, that you've heard for years, but suddenly it hits you differently.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 quick memories from the last time I got to see him. I'm hoping to see him again at the Hollywood Bowl this summer, but saw him last year, and his fingers crossed he'd play the Kenobi theme, and he did, and that was just that theme is so powerful to me, because it is wistful, it is sad, but it is kind and knowing and comes to a much more hopeful place. And I just I had to remind myself to look at the actual humans playing it that I spent a lot of money to see, because my eyes just wanted to literally drift up to the sky. It was so wistful and moving. So there's that in a way was really strangely personal. But then another big power that this music, and it sounds like what Paul really got to experience too, is the community of it. And as Williams often does, the encore was some of the Star Wars hits, including the Imperial March, which I don't know what was different that time, if it was maybe a little bit more up tempo or if it just was the community. But everybody not only got their lightsabers, but lots and lots of literal stomping and headbanging. It was just like, it was so fun. It was so communal. And it was just like, yeah. It was so great. So the community of these things is a part of what makes that music so powerful too.
Suddenly Imperial March became like a headbanger's ball. Love that thing.
It really did. It was really, really fun, really beautiful. So thank you, Paul, for the wonderful Power of the Light Side. And like I said, if you're a patron, go find that picture of Obi-Wan smiling at the twins and share something powerful of your own. Ken, that's it. We want to let people know where we can find ourselves. Where can we find ourselves, Ken? Where they can find us.
I'm still searching for myself. We're on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. We are on Instagram and YouTube as well. Subscribe over there so you don't miss live shows, special videos, and more. Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. We are available on Acast, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and more. Just search. You'll find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter and patreon.com/ForceCenter is where you can support us directly and contribute to wonderful things like Paul's words here. You can find me at Ken Napzok. Go to my website, kennapzok.com. I'll highlight one weird thing. I talk about it every once in a while. I have an ASMR channel. If you like that stuff, you like to relax. And I hadn't been able to touch it in a month. And suddenly it started growing because that's how ASMR works. So if you need some sports card ASMR, just search sports card ASMR on YouTube, and maybe I can help you relax. Joseph, where can they find you?
Well, mostly falling to sleep to your ASMR.
There you go.
When I'm awake, you can find me on social media. I'm on Blue Sky now. If you get an invite, check it out. It might be a great Twitter alternative. I still am on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Mastodon. My handle everywhere is at Joseph Scrimshaw, so come find me there. More news coming soon about the short films I have been working on. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you all. Thank you all for your support emotionally, financially with the Kickstarter and the Patreon. Thanks to Ken for helping me out with the latest short film. Can't wait to share more. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for Kenobi's smile, this has been Q's.